What are ghosts? Some of the very first stories about ghosts told by human beings were shared at local gatherings in the nearest cemetery. It is said that the minerals in the soil in which have decomposed from the corpse will produce ions in the air and thereby reacting with the gases in our atmosphere, producing a sphere of electricity and suddenly shoot out into the horizon at the speed of sound. Some say that they were old tales to help pass the time of hard-working monks in the 14th century. Or some even say that there's just simply a way of our loved ones leaving their marks to remind us that they are still in our presence. There are many conspiracies surrounding the field of the paranormal, and that is why we are here to find out. Ghosts are seen in many forms. The most common are called orbs, sphere-shaped entities that move mischievously in and around haunted areas. They are believed to be just a sample of a human spirit. Others say that they are a gateway to another dimension. Ectoplasmic smoke, a way of an entity leaving its scent for other beings to remember them. Or most interestingly, full form, where a spirit will show itself in a full-scale shape, with the detail and characteristic of the sadly departed. Or even just as red dots, which are said to contain a high magnetic field, explaining why ghosts may carry an electric charge. They are said to appear in photographs and to flicker when seen with a human eye or on film. The Egyptians believed that spirits were bodies' replacement in the afterlife, exactly the same, but with the soul extracted so that they can feel purity and unconditional freedom. Some even claim that the soul of a lost being holds itself within the matter of a child's doll, or even just common furniture, televisions, which is what we know as possession. So where exactly did they come from? Find out in just a moment's time. Two priests were murdered for owing money to the very chancellor of the old hall, and in result were brutally stabbed in the old music room. The bloodstains still exist to this day. In 1937, a woman known as the White Lady was in short time to be wed to a fine fellow. Unfortunately, she had an affair a few months earlier, and things did not flow as they seemed to one another. They had a huge argument within the town court, so sadly, she took her own life.
I was telling Tony about apparently the house is haunted by this Bannister doll, or it's called the Bannister Hall doll, and that if you say her name 3 times, she's supposed to like wrap you up and beat you with chains and etc. So Tony started daring me to, well, why don't we stop and go out and see what happens, and I was up for it, and I decided to say the Bannister Hall doll 3 times, and I did, and then nothing really happened for a while, and then I started hearing chains and some weird noises, and it really freaked me out because Tony heard it too. And I thought at first it was him, but it wasn't. He was really scared, and from the corner of my eye I saw like this shadow of what looked like a little girl or something, and making these weird sounds, and by that time we just ran
And now to the very and deepest valve within the heart of the paranormal. We take you to the most haunted property in England, Chingle Hall, and share some of people's rememberable stories. In 2001, a 14-year-old man and his father go to film Chingle Hall, not knowing what may be unearthed. Within a short space of time, strange things begin to take place. After about half an hour of being in the hall's presence, a strange being in a black cloak appeared before them, and then suddenly vanished.
The other time, I was invited by a lady that I knew who wrote for the owners of Chingle Hall, and we sat in the kitchen and had a cup of tea and we were talking, and then I was asked, because of it was a psychic thing really, to go into the house, walk around and pinpoint any particular places of interest. I pinpointed, without going into great depth, both downstairs and upstairs, all the places I mentioned when we went back to sit in the kitchen. Areas have great significance within Chingle Hall, which is a particularly beautiful place. My friends and I in the 1980s were on the top of Scarborough Castle in Yorkshire. We'd been to Oliver's Mount road races, the motorcycle races, and we decided quite clearly we were going to sleep up there on the castle grounds. Somebody made a comment about a figure that hadn't been there before that just appeared in the middle of this wide open grass. So all our attention was drawn to it. It was dressed in what you can only say is cavalier style clothes, big hat, like a plume, was dark grey, light grey, and black at some points. And the image of this figure, which was moving around, it seemed to float. It didn't seem to have any feet. But as we went through the gap in the wall was higher there. As we got through, it had literally vanished, and there isn't a person in the world that could literally have walked away or even ran at high speed. They would have had to have dropped through a hole in the ground, and there wasn't one. No well, no nothing, just pure, massive, open space. The other time was on a visit to Pendle Hill, of which I got an incredible interest in what they call witch country, the Pendle Forest, that region, and holds a great interest. I've been there for quite some time, filming, doing various bits of work, and I'd had a visit to a village called Gisborne, which is just on the Yorkshire border over the other side from this side of Lancashire. The place where there's a gravestone that was anonymously put in the ground there within the church. 2 black cats appeared in my garden. One came first, and then shortly afterwards followed by the second one. The most beautiful black cats, and they just didn't really want to go away. And being a lover of animals, basically we took them in. They stuck around for quite a long time, and then eventually they just went.
Involved in ghosts.
Well, I think when I first got involved in ghosts, it was when I was about 14, and I moved from Blackpool to Preston to live with my mom in Salisbury Bottoms, and I met someone at school called Daniel Dixon, and I think it was really since then that I was into ghosts and the paranormal. Okay, well, I was filming my playing with my play fighting with my brother on Christmas Eve, and we were just filming and messing about, you know. And then when it came to just viewing the footage and having a look at it that night, I was just sat there watching it. I opened the screen, and when I was watching it, there was it was okay for about 5 minutes, and then suddenly the screen went really fuzzy, and there was this man in a suit appeared, and what he appeared to be doing to be making playing cards levitate, and he had like a distorted sort of voice, you know, like a rumble to it, and talking, and then suddenly the screen went fuzzy. Whittingham Hospital within the depths of Goosnell near Chingle Hall, built in the 18th century and known for its bone-chilling stories of the unknown, suddenly emerges into the light as the followers come forward and share their stories that haunt their past. Not far from the most haunted building in Britain, Chingle Hall, there's this old hospital called Whittingham Hospital, and it was for mental patients. Some people call it a lunatic asylum, but yes, a couple of months ago, me, my friend Daniel, and a couple of friends went there to film him because of the asbestos and that we had to wear these gas masks. So when we went we found a way into the building, and we looked around, and we found hats, some old newspapers, and we had a look around, and everything has been left there, like the medicine bottles, the x-rays, all the medical equipment, you name it. And when we were in there, because Daniel thinks I'm good at this sort of stuff, he asked me to do like a blessing to see if any spirits wanted to show themselves on film. So like, we of course took pictures, we filmed, and funny enough, when we came to viewing the footage, in a couple of pictures you could actually see like this red dot in the corners when you zoom in, and you could see some red dots in the video, and we couldn't explain what it was because it was on film, and so it couldn't have been just like a lighting mistake. And there's also rumours about the patients being tortured, like pulled by their hair. It is not a surprise to many that Whittingham became so haunted, for its many rumours of its patients that were tortured to the very core of the human mind. Some were burned, strangled, stabbed, and even electrocuted. Perhaps they roam the old building reading their documents and looking for answers. Well, I went to Bamber Bridge Cemetery, and with the same friends again, Sean, Daniel Dalglish, Dan Dixon, and when we went there we were just having a look around, and I think this was actually the first time we went out ghost hunting, and no one else took it seriously, but we went there, and once we got there we started having a look around, and there were all these old tombstones, obviously. And we came across this one particular tombstone, and it was all covered in dirt. We had the flashlight, so out of curiosity we rubbed our hands to try and make out what was on the tombstone. So when we had a look at it, what we could make out was there was like a big piece of the stone missing, and there was like the imprint of like a human skeleton in the stone with a hole where the heart should be. And legend in Bamber Bridge area says that they think that there was an argument between a heretic and a peasant. So what happened was, the heretic got that angry that he conjured up a spell and used some sort of a force to make the peasant go into the stone that hard that it left an imprint of the skeleton into the stone, and just afterwards the heretic conjured up a lightning bolt which struck a hole straight through where the heart would be. So we took pictures of it and find that really interesting. There have been many make-believe stories portrayed in many films about the tale of a killer doll, but just one night in time, the story decides to become a truth. Antique dealer Jerry Smith has collected antiques for over 30 years. Some of many significance in their shapes and sizes, until one day of searching the world's biggest library, the internet, one severely caught her eye, a clown named Vincent.
It was 4:30 p.m. and I put Vincent in the back room where all the other antiques go. Nobody goes in there except me or my son. Checked the room about 2:30 a.m. to inspect the doll for its material qualities, but I stopped in my tracks when I noticed that Vincent had moved 5 feet to the other chair. I inspected him. I noticed that his clothes were shifted. He had dust on his clothes. And I have never cleaned that room. And most interestingly, he had worn soles on his shoes. So the question is, was this coincidence or something paranormal?
Sometimes a past loved one, particularly a young child, will be confused of where to keep its inner spirit, so it will trap it within a young doll, which is most likely to be the item that they cherish the most, leaving them trapped between a gateway between heaven and hell. Were these voices cries of its lost partner, or calls to the people present? But how do we know EVP is not simply a young child doing the voice? This is why a logical and more scientific approach needed to take place. This is why paranormal investigator John Smith, her husband, needed to take over the plan. The process of EVP was used. It stands for Electronic Voice Phenomena. Static within the fibers of the cassette tape to capture such sounds. Back in the 1920s, a famous bird watcher was in his local field looking for any interesting new birds to record, jotting down their voices and the variety in their sounds. He was listening to the voices carefully through his headphones. Suddenly, he heard something that caught his eye. So where did these voices come from? Were they medieval, Bronze Age, Victorian, or modern people? This is when EVP was discovered. His name is Reverend Drayton Thomas. Many other methods have been used to record such entities, some of which being using a television to capture the very faces of the departed. Normal housing equipment such as Polaroid cameras, video cameras, are used to capture them.
I set up my EVP recorder with brand new batteries and tape. When I came to review the cassette, there wasn't just an hour of static, there was what I describe as voices. The next night I locked Vincent in a cupboard just before I went to bed. and at about 2:18 a.m. my dog was barking at the cupboard where Vincent was. Out of all the years I've spent researching, taking pics, videos, I didn't quite experience anything like this. I looked at eBay because of my fascination of the experience I had had with Vincent, so I scrolled eBay for any dolls that may happen to be the same or similar to Vincent. I clicked through at least 30 pages. Just when I was about to give up, I stopped dead in my tracks, and to my amazement, there was a doll that looked identical to Vincent, except for a few small details. This doll had different clothing, different style of hair and colour, and different makeup. Right away I got my credit card out to purchase him. The other doll arrived. He was in pristine condition. But the question was he connected to any paranormal activity? I set it recording one night next to the doll overnight to say if I could strike lucky. I took Vincent to the computer and pulled up the page where the doll was being advertised. I set up an EVP and pressed record. On recording, I asked him a few questions, the first being, "Do you know him?" and the second being, "Look familiar?" A voice on the tape clearly said, That's why I left it to my husband to do the technical side of the investigation.
Jerry and myself have been doing EVP for years and decided to see whether the EVPs of Vincent were genuine or if it's just somebody having a laugh. So we took an EVP that was what we can make out to be a little girl. The EVP was recorded when we were looking through a cemetery, and by listening to it over and over again we believe that it says. I have two programs for analysing this sort of sound, so we took our standard program Audacity as well as a Cool Edit Pro and loaded the waveform of the girl saying hello, and loaded a file of myself also saying hello. On the left hand side of the screen we have our level of decibels and our frequency level. As you can see here, the average hertz for a human voice is about 137, and when we compare it to the voice of this entity saying hello, the scale of the voice's depth is about 12, would you believe? It is impossible for any human being to produce a frequency this low. The only life form we know of that's capable of hearing a frequency this low is a dog or a cat. This probably explains why a home containing paranormal activity may have a strange behaviour from their pets, such as barking or hissing. So the question is, if a human being wasn't making this sound, what was?
Result, the story has become more commercialized, and people worldwide have expanded the so-known hobby by placing webcams in various places and hoping to capture something interesting. An image is and refreshes within 30 to 60 seconds before a new one is captured. Many reports have been typed and submitted. While the sidekicks of other methods. Psychics, also called witch by some, use herbal methods to make their connections. Many other methods are attached, such as crystal balls and tarot cards that predict one's future. Whether it be destiny or tragedy. We are astounded by this talent as to its accuracy. Dowsing rods, used by various people and carried across fields, hold parallel to the ground, uncrossed, but when crossed an area underground that contains magnetic activity or flowing water, they will cross. Or one method not mentioned in your normal gossip, and not suggested in your average board game, developed many years ago, and is known as the Ouija board. The board is made of wood, sometimes coffin wood, as they believe it makes a stronger connection. The board is rectangular, and the alphabet is written from the left side to the right side, in an arc shape. The numbers 0 to 9 are written below. Answers yes and no. Decorations, as some believe they help the spirits to come forward. A triangular cursor is made for the players to use in practice. Then a prayer is said by whoever desires, and they will say the following phrase: "If there are any spirits there, please contact." Sometimes the cursor takes a few minutes to move, or just seconds. Sometimes the board can talk nonsense, or make perfect and astonishing sense.
Then the letter 2.
Number 2. Bye. Some believe that the pioneers of the board were inspired by an Indian method known as the Kabbalah board, and will revolve to the numbers and letters desired. Only an eye is used instead of a cursor. And if becomes agitated, will destroy anything and everything in its sight known to break walls and glass. So just what are ghosts? Why are they here? Where did they come from? To this day, there has been many scientific approaches to find out exactly what the paranormal is. Who knows? It is up to you to decide.